And we definitely have an October surprise for you all this month because Stacey sides with Satanists.
And it's all about the ballots, baby.
And Floyd County finally connects to the rest of the world.
So you're definitely going to want to pay attention to this one.
Short but sweet.
And welcome back to Conservatives Talk. My name's Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we like to remind everybody to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on any of the productions that they see on any of the platforms that we do any of our productions and put out any of our content on. And make sure you're also hitting the subscribe button. That way you can stay up to date on any of the productions that we put out, and you'll never miss a single moment of Jamie's amazing smiling face and his ever-changing t-shirts.
So they were supporting the Braves.
Exactly. And make sure you're also going to conservativestalk.org and hitting the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and helping us out with what you're able to, because every little bit goes an incredibly long way in helping Jamie and I to be able to continue to produce content and continue to share and really spread our message across the world. We'll leave it at that. I mean, I like that.
I like that one.
So, Jamie, why don't you jump into your first reminder?
Okay, so the first reminder is, don't forget to boycott hometown headlines. We are starting to see some gains in that, and thanks to you all, we and reported on by The Guardian, there's an article that came out that showed that, recently Rome News Tribune subscriptions have dropped to 9,000 from their heyday of 100,000 years ago to about 10,000 or so recently. And then right around the time of boycott hometown headlines came out. And then between this Guardian article, you can see where they've now dropped about 1,000 people. So that's 7,000 print and, 2,000 digital subscriptions for Rome News Tribune, thanks to hometown headlines.
So it's also interesting to note with that, and we're not saying that this is what happened, but it's interesting to make the comparison and the parallel between this. Axios actually reported on the fact that there are these, technically they're Florida-based, but these ultra-liberal organizations that were started up and sponsored by Hillary Clinton. They are buying out and starting all of these little local media outlets and these organizations and pushing content online, posing as local media outlets. And they're all just pushing all this liberal junk and this liberal content. And that's kind of what we see with hometown headlines.
Well, and that's why
is that what's happened with them? Did they get bought out by Hillary Clinton?
Well, Justin didn't want to make the correlation, but I will, right? Because then we start to see.
Be careful of that. we have to be careful making that correlation.
That's true. Well, we're just saying. Let's just say it this way.
What if that's what's going on?
Because we've noticed that there are certain media conglomerates that are trying to consolidate local papers and push a certain message. And all of this starts around the same time that Rome News Tribune gets bought and hometown headlines gets bought by Rome News Tribune. So the correlation between all three of them at this time is, kind of becoming interesting.
Yeah, and it's been reported in the Axios article that it was done specifically in swing states, which they say Georgia is, but although we would beg to differ with a lot of that, the fact that the timing of these purchases of these articles or these local news outlets here, and the fact of when these or this report began and they started gathering all this information kind of lines up. But again, we are not saying that's what happened, but we're saying, what if?
Well, to add to another point, because we can do a whole segment on this.
Yes,
but
we could.
There's a bill that's getting ready to come out too in Congress. And this bill actually is supposed to try to remove local newspapers from the antitrust laws. So, not
Well, it's trying to push the antitrust laws into breaking up the big conglomerates, which what we were reading in that opinion piece that had just been published here this past week by the editorial board for this local newspaper. They were saying that they were trying to get this done because of the ad revenue that was coming in. They were getting essentially 30% of the overall publishing capabilities and the ad revenue capabilities that they had previously been able to get because Meta and Amazon were sucking up everything else.
Yeah, between Meta, Amazon, and Google, that's where small businesses and everybody else has been going. And really, I've said this multiple times, the only reason why you need a paper now is because no one's found a way to digitize the public hearing process. Okay, and here's what I mean by that.
Oh, I mean, that's C-SPAN.
Well, no. From a national standpoint, but what I'm saying is from a local standpoint, like you have to publicly advertise anything that has to do with personal or real estate or anything like that before you change the zoning, sale of like abandonment or anything. So the only
before you give away too many topics on that, let's keep that one under our hat.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We'll stop there.
Getting off. That's going to be a whole getting off of our
boycott hometown headlines.
Investment. Not just that, but getting off on top of our potential investment opportunities in the future.
Yeah,
Jamie.
Boycott hometown headlines.
Yeah. Well, so something else I want to add on this. One of the things that I was reading was that, and this is something that we're going to bring up in a future episode. Where actually Jamie and I are talking about putting out a national challenge into combating the actual big lie. And we just found out here recently that Google and the UN have partnered into anytime that anything involving the big lie of climate change comes about, or if it's Googled or anything, the leading search engine in the entire world, if it's Google climate change, the UN automatically pops up as the first feeds in it because of the partnership that they have.
Well, and it's funny you mentioned that, right? Because that's the same thing that local papers are arguing about, because here's the thing. They can't sell that ad space or pay more than private sectors, right? Or private sectors won't come to the newspaper to do that. So here's how this works. You pay a certain price through Google Ads.
Well, this isn't Google Ads.
No, hear me out.
Yeah.
You pay a certain price through Google Ads in order to be one of the top spots on there. Through a partnership with the UN, what they are saying is that we're not going to subsidize this, but they're going to put them up front.
The top 10 search results will be UN based articles.
Whereas you used to have to pay for them from a business standpoint, which is what I'm saying.
Yes. Oh, okay. I got what you're saying with that. Yes.
So now local papers can't compete with private business and paying for that ad space for their articles to come up first. And private businesses is not advantageous for them based on viewership to go to the paper versus paying for that ad space. So that's why they feel that they're being sucked out and pushed out of the market, which is pre-market in itself. The only reason they still exist, again, is because no one's figured. Yeah.
You're killing me, Jamie. You're killing me. But again, make sure you boycott hometown headlines.
Boycott hometown headlines.
Exactly.
Can I do a favorite part now?
Let's do your favorite part.
27 days until we beat Stacey Abrams.
I am
completely canceled.
I am literally counting down the days and the hours, the minutes until this happens.
Can't wait. Honestly, after we thank our affiliates, I can't wait to roll into this next segment, because we beat Stacey Abrams in 27 days. We cancel her after this.
I hope so. Well, again, that remains to be seen. But as he said, we do want to say a quick thank you to our affiliates, and that those being Net News Network. Net News Network is our national kind of media conglomerate. They have a wide platform for actual verified news and content producers who give you kind of the local perspectives from wherever you are throughout the United States. So make sure you're going to netnewsnetwork.net and checking out for other content producers quite like us, but not nearly as well as what we do. They're okay, but they're good, but they're not us.
Yeah, they're getting there.
We also encourage everyone to check out Veterans for America First. So, Veterans for America First is a national political grassroots organization that really promotes the America First policy and agenda. And they do that through advocating for projects and really getting behind candidates who they know will fight tooth and nail to ensure that America remains the greatest nation in the entire world. And they do that through their media platform, and their media platform being Vet's Voice. So make sure you're searching for Vet's Voice on Getter, Facebook, YouTube, all the major platforms. You'll only find content produced by those who are on the front lines fighting in the political trenches to make sure that we remain the top nation in the world. So, Jamie, let's jump right into it again. And I'm going to throw this one back up there because I'll be honest with you. The graphic there explains more about this than anything else.
Yeah. So, it's very funny and it's very interesting that this all kind of happens around the same time. And here's where we're going with this. So we'll start here. Everyone's saying that a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago, Stacey Abrams came out and she was on a panel and she said that it's manufactured, that the heartbeat is something that we can hear at 6 weeks.
How she can come by that is absolutely beyond me. I am.
She basically just said
I'm
it's
floored
fake.
by this. Yeah,
she said it's fake.
Exactly.
She said that doctors have created this fake heartbeat at 6 weeks to say that someone's pregnant. Okay.
Yeah, that's essentially, it's not a heartbeat. It is the sonograph's interpretation of the electrical pulses and signals that are being sent to the brain and unspecified cells within the fetus's body. That would be where the heart is. And for those of you who are not very familiar with anatomy, your brain is continuously sending electrical impulses and signals to your cardiac muscles, which causes your heart
to beat.
Exactly. The lub dub that you hear, that is because of the electrical signals that are being sent from your brain. So that,
which is part of the fallacy,
exactly.
right? Like because it's almost like saying that, oh well, because the brain's working, the heart can't exist, which is stupid. I mean, I'm just sorry that's what it is, right? Because they're tandem, they're tethered.
Well, have you met who we're talking
about? So that's why I kind of want to fast forward a little bit, right? Because can we pull that image back up? I think this is the most interesting part. Okay, so here are two articles that we found. All right, and the best part about this is all we did was flip the photos. That's a real Stacey Abrams quote, and the other quote that showed the satanic symbol image shows that the Church of Satan.
Well, I mean, that was so both of those are titles of the same articles. We just flipped the titles onto the
other images. Yeah, we just flipped the images based on the titles, and the other article just so happens to be that the Satanic Church is fighting for religious freedoms and their right to abort children because of similar things that Stacey Abrams is saying.
Yes. So what he's referring to that is in Idaho and Indiana, the Satanic Church has filed a federal claim in court saying that they are being denied their religious rights as a church, as a 501c3, as a nonprofit organization is recognized by our IRS, and how the Satanic Church is recognized by our IRS. I mean, that's a whole new topic. But anyway,
I'll get into that.
The fact that they believe that Idaho's and Indiana's trigger laws involving abortions are violating their rights to be able to abort children in their practice of their religion. So they have 4 points that they made with this case, and those being that, number one, it is a violation of their 13th Amendment, saying that they would not have, that they're being forced to continue these pregnancies without having just compensation within these pregnancies. The second one that they brought up is it is a violation of the 14th Amendment and of the fact that it is an involuntary servitude to the child. The third one is that it would also be a 14th Amendment issue, and that it discriminates against people who got pregnant by accident or during a ritualistic event or a religious event versus those who had been raped or through incest.
Whoa. So I don't know about y'all, but we'll do that in my church.
Wait a second. Well,
we don't do that in my church.
The fourth one being that it is an exercise of their practice under the Religious Freedom Act.
See, it's the last two that really get me.
Well, it's also they are also claiming a Fifth Amendment issue, being it is a violation of their right to privacy and of the fact that the states would be essentially violating their right or their perceived right of privacy, and the fact that the doctors would be required or no longer able to say or to keep quiet that they are performing these abortions.
Well, we've gone through this a couple of times where, like, the right to privacy is not real, nor is the fact that your doctor cannot sell off your information through HIPAA, right? Those are two,
absolutely can.
Those are two misconceptions.
Mhm.
It's the last 2 points that you made, or the two of the last three that you made that really kind of drive home for me. Okay. So I understand why we have religious freedom, because we were escaping the Church of England, right?
Well, this is a Religious Freedom Act.
Hear me out.
Yeah.
Hear me out.
Okay. Go ahead.
Which is why our founders felt that it was important, as society has evolved, right? We use that as a foundation and a bedrock in America, because, we are a melting pot, and we want to be respectful to other people's religions to a certain degree. But I do not know one other than this one, okay, that does something like crazy, like to where anyone can get pregnant in a religious ritual. That's wild. That's wild.
Well, I mean, the Church of Satanists, they worship the fact that they are. If anybody's seen any scary horror movie out there,
I understand.
They sacrifice innocent children to.
They want to be earthbound. They believe that the body is more important than spirit. They are the antithesis of everything that seems to be holy or righteous. And that goes for any sect off of Judeo-Christian or Muslim ideology, right? Here's the other thing, and I've said this 1,000 times. I don't think that any religion, any belief, anything as a human species that destroys another human or a child in itself can be righteous.
Well, of course.
Can't be right.
Well, I like how you changed that one on there, because the one thing that the Church of Satanists proclaim not to be is righteous.
Yeah.
So one of the arguments that they're making is in relation to a precedent that was set, and I forget the case of what it was. I should know this, and I'm bad, Justin, but there is a precedent that was set by a Native American case or an Indian claim that had been brought several years ago under the Religious Freedom Act, and involving distributing peyote during their religious events.
So I remember
they're
this.
saying that because this Native American organization was able to distribute a Schedule I narcotic, then they should be able to have abortions whenever they want to because of their religion.
Sacrament and murder are two totally different things.
Oh yes,
and I think that's very important to make sure that everyone knows the distinction, right?
Mhm.
So what they're saying is, and I remember this case in my con law class. You got to take it as a poli-sci. Look, anyway,
I love that class.
and that's why you went that route and I went this one. But it was the conversation about religious sacrament, similar to how we handle communion.
Yes.
That's different, because that's an individual consumption that only affects the individual.
Not just, well, less of that and more of there is historic precedent behind it, and it's a long-term and deeply held religious belief, and deeply held being a very, very important thing in any context involving con law.
Understood, right? But the reason why I'm separating the two,
I understand where you're going with that. I'm just giving the legal distinction.
Yeah. And you know, because sacrament is a part of religious things, but it's ingestion by the individual, nothing that can affect another life. And that goes back to why this is a problem, because, you know, I don't know what Stacey's religious beliefs are, but when you start preaching the same message as the Satanic Church,
I can tell you exactly what her religious beliefs are.
We got a problem.
That's her religious beliefs right there.
That's it, bottom line, okay?
I mean, because if you are there on that side of that issue, that's where your religious beliefs are. That's with Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi.
Put it on a timeline. Put it right on a timeline, right? Because then we can start to see, it's just ironic that over the last year, they want to change the definition of a woman. Warnock votes to where males can get marital contraceptives.
Again, you're jumping ahead of yourself on that one.
Okay.
That's upcoming.
Then we get to the, you know, her statement on that panel. And now this article where she is saying there's a fallacy in us now trying to say we know when pregnancy begins.
So what I'm curious about is
then throw in the lawsuit, and you see what they're doing.
Well, so we had somebody who is an attorney, and notably so. She was also a judge for a while, and then she became a U.S. Supreme Court nominee. And during her nomination, she said that she is not a biologist because that's just not her background. And she now sits on the U.S. Supreme Court. So how can an attorney who is running for the Senate of Governor know when a pregnancy is, or know if a pregnancy or heartbeat in a pregnancy is a fallacy or not? Because I'm pretty sure she's not a biologist.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the same thing like when LeBron James tries to give me political advice. You know what I mean? When I've been doing this for 16 years, literally the majority of my life, like, teach me how to do a jump shot. Teach me how to dunk. You know what I mean? I'll tell you something about politics. You teach me how to dunk.
I can't jump.
But it goes to the point of like, they made a movie about that.
I know.
But you know what I mean? It goes to the point of like, what this is right down the line, mainstream left-leaning messaging, and it shows what book they're reading versus the book that the rest of us are reading. Like that's in your face. It can't be more blatant than that. She literally says, we don't know when it starts around the same. We don't know when pregnancy starts. Abortion should be okay. They talk about abortion up to the last day. Men can get pregnant, but we're going to file a lawsuit for our religious beliefs that says that it's okay. You see what they're doing?
I love the fact that well, I say I love, but I think it's interesting that they're filing this as a violation of their First Amendment rights, and the fact that, well, technically a violation of First and 14th, because First and the 14th combined in result of a federal issue also being posed on the states, and that if Congress actually passes a law as well that makes abortion illegal across the United States, then this lawsuit would protect them under that as well. So, I mean, this is them killing two birds with one stone, if that's not too bad of a reference on that one. I guess trying to kill two babies with one stone.
Democrats, man.
Literally.
Democrats, man. They are now using the Satanic Church for their own bidding.
And one of the other interesting things about this whole deal is that they are trying to claim that they don't actually worship Satan, that they worship their individualistic principles and their individualistic liberties. They're trying to come off more as libertarians.
Yeah, but isn't that in the Book of Satan?
I'm pretty sure that it is.
You know what I mean? Like,
it's one of his great lies.
Yeah. Is that, you know, so
if you can't tell, Jamie and I both pushed the whole concept of Christian nationalism. So
Well, and here's the other thing. Okay. I've said this multiple times. My dad was a minister, right? And he was an English major. So studying different types of texts, I have 2 bookshelves of just religious texts and writings and everything else in my house. And one thing my dad said was, good Christians, devout Christians know the enemy as well as they know themselves and our religion. Don't get consumed by it, but understand it so that you know how they're going to attack you.
Pretty sure somebody else said that too.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just 102.
Yeah.
And The Art of War.
I know. The Prince is one of my favorite books.
Good old Machiavelli.
Yep.
But with that, we always like to remind our subscribers to make sure they're hitting the like button as well as the share button on any of the content they run across on any of the platforms that they see anything that we do put out on. And make sure they are also hitting the subscribe button so they'll never miss a moment of any of our content or Jamie's wonderfully smiling face and that infectious laugh. Also, make sure you're going to conservativestalk.org and hitting the sponsor tabs and helping us out what you're able to with that. And we also, and I meant to do this earlier, but we want to give a quick shout out to TAC 1333. TAC 1333 has been leaving us a lot of comments on there. We have received your comments and we have been paying attention to them. We are looking at them.
Thank you for your support.
Absolutely. We love everything you're doing with that. And if anybody else would like to leave any comments,
thank you to Chris Bell
really
too.
Ask any questions yet though. But if you'd like to have any questions answered or addressed by Jamie and I, make sure you're leaving those in the comments as well.
I also want to do a quick shout out to Chris Bell too. Chris is another one of our devoted listeners and followers and sponsors. And I just want to say thank you, Chris.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chris. But let's jump right into the next one. And that is, it's all about the ballots, baby. So if you live here in God's country in the great state of Georgia,
Georgia on my mind.
Exactly. Make sure you, by the time that they actually see this, it would be a little bit too late to make sure they're registered to vote. But you should have already be registered. You should already be registered anyway, because if you're not, that's on you, to be honest with you, because there have been ample opportunities and ample messaging across everywhere and everything. So if you haven't by this point in time, it's
and to add, if you're in the Coos Valley area, and went to the Coos Valley Fair, we made sure that we mentioned that all week from the Floyd County Republican Party. Make sure you're registered to vote. Registration ended yesterday, day before that,
on the 11th
to make sure that all registration was done so that you can get ready to vote. The other key dates will be October 17th is when early voting starts. Yep. And then if you do decide that you need to vote via absentee, the date to request your absentee ballot will be the last day to request your absentee ballot will be October 28th.
Yes. So early voting will be, you'll be able to show up at the local precincts designated by your county. You'll be able to vote at those areas. You'll be able to drop off your absentee ballots if that's the way that you decide to vote. And again, under SB 202, a lot of the issues that we had seen in 2020 have been addressed. Yep. And they have I would say they've done a good job of securing them, although I would personally love to see absentee ballots completely done away with outside of actual excused absentee ballots. But the unexcused absentee ballots are, again, digressing on that.
They're not in random places anymore. They're usually inside of a building.
No, they're inside the building.
They're by law, they're inside of the building.
They're recorded constantly. They are in lit places, and they have to be inside the voting precincts of where the early voting is going on.
Correct. And I think the biggest part is that now on the envelope, it now has to requires a state ID number or your driver's license number if you choose to vote absentee. And that in itself is a major win. Because there's no more of random votes being dumped now.
Especially
without verification or way of verifying. Yeah, because you're not going. I mean,
which the Democrats still tout as a major win, but again, can't touch those without getting deplatformed. So, something else that we want to bring to your attention, especially if you live here in Georgia, you're going to have all of your federal and statewide elected officials coming on the Loudermilk Young debate series. And those are going to take place on October 16th, October 17th, and October 18th. And we'll provide the link in the description to be able to where you're able to find those. So all you got to do is hit that link and it'll take you directly to the schedule, and you'll be able to find out exactly where it is that you can find and watch these debates. So you'll be able to see exactly how asinine the Democrat platforms are in compared to what the Republicans are pushing.
Yeah, we'll share the live feed because they usually do a live feed on like Facebook or something of the debate from PBS. And so we can share that live feed on our Facebook page as well. So people can go to our Facebook page and pull up the live debate on those dates. But we'll also share the link as well if you want to go through another streaming source, because I know a lot of our viewers don't like to use Facebook.
That's very true. So in the spirit of voting, we also want to bring up the fact that something that happened in our great and magnificent president's home state of Delaware. So recently they passed, or the Delaware state legislation passed 2 new laws that would allow for absolute unincorporated mail-in voting. I mean, they would send ballots out to a cat if you applied for one with that. So that, and they also passed same-day voter registration. So you could register to vote that same day and vote without going through verification if you're an actual citizen or met the requirements to be able to vote. There was no vetting of where your residence was, or if you're able to even to vote in that county and be able to voice your capabilities with that. So the Delaware legislature passed those, but the Delaware state Supreme Court struck those down as being unconstitutional to the Delaware state constitution, which I think is great for that.
I think it's great, and I think it says a lot, right? Because this is shot. This is definitely a shot at the president, and here's why I say that. So you see me finding my words, right?
I'm waiting for them.
Here's the thing: as a consultant, right, you always want to have some precedent or test run before you try to do something major. Okay, so nowhere has there ever been a governing body that has passed same-day registration that you can point to and say, here's how it works. Right? So as the president of the United States, if you're a bully like Joe Biden and the Biden family, you go to your state legislators, you get them to pass something, and then you can point to it whenever you try to pass it across the nation.
Especially when, for instance, here in Georgia, how Joe Biden came out and said that SB 202 or Voting Integrity Act was essentially or was a close relative of the Jim Crow laws that were passed. And the response to that was, we're actually have more election or more voting opportunities than your own state does. So this was done in response to the fact that Georgia actually secured its elections and has very fair and free elections, but yet Delaware, absolutely not.
We allow people more opportunity to vote and get out to vote legally in the state of Georgia than they do in the president's home state. So he tried to correct it to match the Democratic platform, and it just got thrown in his face because the way that they did it was not legal.
No, it would be required per the state Supreme Court. It would require a constitutional amendment, and they just tried to force it through the state legislature, which kind of blew up in their face a little bit.
Not how that works.
Nope, not at all. So another thing, and this is something that we really hadn't, it just kind of popped in my head, but did you know that DC is now going to they're going to be putting a bill on Mayor Bowser's desk that would allow for non-citizens to be able to vote in DC, in our nation's capital, non-citizens able to vote. for local and municipal, not federal, are things on that.
Because
there's no real state at that point. It's just local and municipal. But yeah, they're going to allow for it.
The second test. So because
and it was
playing it out, right?
Had already been done like that in New York, and that had been ruled unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm. Playing it out, you got to have it play out one way or another. Now, the way we've redeveloped things, okay, and what I mean by that is there was a certain point in this country's history to where cities, townships, villages, all of them didn't really have any form of meaning. They were just one of the they were incorporated
states.
Yeah. It was all about counties, states and counties.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I go what you're
But now you can do smaller test samples by having the ability to do things through cities, through states, through counties at different levels. And so this same day voter registration probably is not it's not constitutional, but it's probably not a way to do it at a state level constitution, which is what Delaware is testing.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably not a way to be able to do it at a county level to make it to where they can vote in county-wide elections or Commonwealth-wide elections. So the other test would be DC, to where they have a large left-leaning majority where they can come in and say, okay, let's test it as a cityhood if they have the ability to do it.
So one of the things that was brought up with this is the fact that this bill would allow any illegal immigrant who had been living in the city for 30 days at the minimum to be able to vote. So think of how long Governor Abbott in Texas has been busing these illegal immigrants to DC.
Well,
so a good majority of those will now be able to vote in DC.
I think that's going to backfire on them too.
I hope so.
Well, because think about this. Think about the New York, right? New York, when parts of New York got some of these immigrants that came over illegally and they were bussed up there, they put them and moved them from being in Manhattan inner city parts to military bases, and now have them staying in tents.
Yep. And getting ready to head into winter.
So imagine these people who are in DC who have been living in homeless shelters because DC didn't want to deal with it. They're going to give them the right to vote. And now we're going to see where the tables turn.
I would like to see that. I would love to see good old Mayor Bowser, and every time I say her name, I get the image of Koopa that jumps into my head. So little Mario Brothers reference with that one for those of you who don't know. So
I literally see Bowser like when I think of her, I think of Bowser with Princess Peach's crown on.
I mean, the image that we did. I'm gonna have to pull that up and post.
Yeah,
and put that one on there.
Yeah,
put the little thought bubbles coming out.
Yeah.
So when you see that, that's what we're talking about with that. But yeah, so that's something else that's really that's really jumping up there in the whole election wide world. If you haven't caught up with that or that hasn't come across your radar yet. But as always, we do also like to remind everyone to make sure they are hitting the like button and the share button on any of the content that they see that we produce and share out and put on any of the platforms that we regularly do, and make sure they're also hitting the subscribe button. That way you will never miss a moment of any of the content that we produce or Jamie's incredibly infectious laughter, which leaves us all in stitches, let's be honest. And make sure you're also going to our website, conservativestalk.org, and hitting the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner, and helping us out with what you're able to. So for those of you who are not very familiar with what's been going on, we've been in almost, what's it been, like 25-year-long battle trying to get a direct connector
about 30
from Rome or from Floyd County to I-75. And we're finally in the final stages. And to be completely honest, we have an absolute expert on the show when it comes to doing this, because it's literally what he does in his everyday life. So I'm going to let Jamie take over on this part. I've got a couple of things I'm going to throw in there and see what he thinks about with some of this stuff. But again, take it away, Mr.
So
Expert.
Here's the first thing, right? When we start talking about the development and of counties and cities, interstates are a luxury and a poison, depending on who you are.
Yes, that's very true. And we saw that play out here in Rome.
And what I mean, and here's what I really mean by that is when you start talking about growth of a community and trying to bring in new businesses, new like not necessarily new ideas, but new ways of doing things or getting people to come and move to your area for tourism or even just visit, highway access is major.
Mm-hmm.
That has kind of been a hindrance in Floyd County, and why other areas like Calhoun or Cartersville have, Cherokee County have blown up because they have direct access to interstate.
Actually, Calhoun's got more than any other city in the entire state in regard to access to major exits onto 75, which they have 5 actual exits in the city of Calhoun that go on to 75.
Yep, which is big when you start talking about. So I want to give a perfect example of this before I dabble into the details and why this is important and why I think that we as a community need to do whatever we can to help the county. Okay. So here's the thing. When let's take Popeyes for an example, or I'm not going to take Popeyes. Cut that out. Let's take restaurant industry for an example.
You just made me hungry.
Let's take restaurant industry for example. All right. When a major chain restaurant looks to move into an area, one of the first things that they ask is they look at what is the highway access, because they need to make sure that they can get a freezer truck with all its raw materials or whatever it's needed within a certain time frame before the food spoils from their distribution center. Okay. So if you can't get it within a very defined time frame in order for your food not to spoil, you're never going there.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense.
So we automatically cut ourselves off from a lot of things when we do not have major highway access, because we already get there pretty quick. All right. And here's the difference too. Anybody who drives down 75 every day, you're guaranteed 20 to 25 minutes that you're going through Cartersville or Calhoun. Okay. Whereas if you had a direct route to there, you just saved 20 minutes. Now you just went from an hour to an hour 20 to 40 minutes, 50 minutes for you to get to inner Atlanta, which is where a lot of these warehouse manufacturers are inside the metro bandwidth. Okay. So the other important part about this is that when you start looking at even like-minded individuals who want to come in and redevelop housing, redevelop ways of innovation for, utilities, all of that plays a role in it too, because they have to be able to get material and things in at a costly, effective way, especially when it comes to labor, that kind of thing. All of it sparks itself. So this project in itself is very big. Now, looking at the elements of it too, you see a lot of congestion at the 41-411 interchange right there. Kevin Road, Baker Road, all that going towards Cartersville right now. And what a lot of people don't realize is that red lights, stop signs, things like that cause that same congestion, because now you're delaying the pathway of travel. One thing that made me feel great about this project is in those areas, they're putting in roundabouts. And though people hate roundabouts, you're not at a complete stop. You slow down, but you're not at a complete stop. So you keep the traffic flow moving, which allows for everything to continue to flow at a decent rate, while where you are congesting traffic at maybe like, on the same highway, Walmart or something, where it's more pertinent, where people are coming in and out. It gives a little bit more flexibility and flow to reduce the number of cars that you're sitting in traffic for.
It's just un-American. It's communist.
Nah,
it's communist. That's all.
It's not.
That's what roundabouts are. Roundabouts are communist.
Roundabouts are the future.
You heard it here first. Roundabouts. We're gonna do a hashtag. Hashtag roundabouts are communist.
If it was up to me, I would replace almost every red light with roundabout.
James advocating communism.
No. Every red light should be replaced with roundabout, because you really waste time when there are other safety traffic measures. Now, I get that at some point you should, but you reduce the speed mainly because the high impact that could be potentially there based upon the speed of the road.
I got you. So in your expertise with this stuff, what would be the kind of the projected timeline that we could see where Floyd County will be directly tied in with a direct route to 75?
Months, like years.
Months, years, decades, centuries.
Well, usually when you put a schedule together like this, it's in months. I would say anywhere between 50, 55 months is a good conservative way of looking at it.
So around about 4 years.
Yeah. Because you're really looking at there's other things that you can get into, especially when you start to get in construction. Everything looks great on paper. But once you really you don't know anything till you bust open the earth. So that can add in extra blasting. That could add in different things like relocations and looking at the report that they did. There's a certain amount of funds set aside for reloads. But
for
relocation of utilities. But you don't necessarily know what's actually there till you get there. And so delays in material, things like that with construction.
So you're talking about cost there. What is the cost that this is going to? So what is this going to cost us to be able to get this done? And where are these funds coming from? So
from what I looked at, it's about $143 million from start to finish. That goes with mitigation credits. We can talk about that. Construction costs.
No,
thanks, Joe Biden.
Talk about that.
Justin hates it when I talk about mitigation credits because it's a racket. But we can talk about construction costs. Thanks, Joe Biden, for the inflation on that, because that's a good chunk of the money in itself. Mm-hmm. And then right away, the government legally has to give someone fair market value minimum for their property if they were required to get right away.
So what he's talking about there is eminent domain, meaning that the government has the unequivocal right, if it is in the interest of everyone, or it's deemed in the interest of everyone, to be able to come in, seize your property.
Well,
and that's exactly what you did. You seize the property for what is considered market value.
Well, here's the thing. No, and there's a lot of misconception with this. Okay. Here's the misconception, right? Yes. If this project is something that has to go forward, there is a way for the government to seize the property. Okay. Yeah. But that does not mean that someone is not compensated for.
Oh, I'm not saying that.
They are compensated.
Fair market value.
They are compensated, and it is fair market value based upon your taxable property, which is the most important part of it. So you can look at it, and you're not going to get anything else you're not going to get anything less than that than you would. They have to pay you at the highest dollar amount.
Well,
because the government.
In a free market society, I would be able to, okay, so the government's coming in to take my house or my mobile home or my business and demolish it in order to bring in a right of way. But in a free market society, I should be able to dictate how much it is I am willing to allow for that to happen.
But you do.
No, not at all.
No, you do.
To a certain extent.
No, you do, because you are allowed to make an offer and negotiate. It's not like they go in and say, here's what it is. I'm not going to give you anything else for it. That's your right to negotiate on what that value is and what that looks like. Perfect example. Okay. So let's say that
if I had a $20 cardboard box and the piece of property that it went with, I could get $5 million for it.
No, because that's not fair market value. Let me give you an example. Okay.
It's definitely not a free market. Then.
No, it is a free market, because here's the thing. Okay. Let's say it's a household property. Right, you got dogs, you got kids, you got a little playground back there. Mm-hmm. All right, all that's
3 generations grew up there.
All that is incorporated into whatever your counteroffer is, and they have to add that to the assessment. Okay. Now, the other thing that comes into it is when the appraiser comes out, all that is also incorporated into it. Anything that has to be done with your value. Now, most governments aren't going to be like, okay, we'll build you a fence. You know what I mean? We'll rebuild the playground. They're going to cut you a check for whatever that value is to go ahead and move on with the property. Now, at that point, they're giving you the most flexibility possible, because whether you actually wanted to rebuild the fence or your kids play on that playground or not, you're going to be compensated for it. And then you'll have the option to build it back if you want to, or do whatever you want to with the money because it's now been given to you. That's why I say, like, people look at it from a negative standpoint, but it's going to increase the property values for those individuals. They're going to be compensated for it at fair market value.
How's going to increase the property values when you're tearing down the home they live in?
Because now their property is more valuable, and you're not always tearing down the home. And you're not always tearing down the home.
Well, in this case, the homes that they are going to be
some of them
Rolloing or whatever it's called, 15 homes, 4 mobile homes, and 3 businesses.
Well, here's the thing, okay? Just because the property is affected doesn't mean that the home or the business has to be moved. If they do have to be moved, they still have to be paid for not just the land value, but the value of the structure or anything that's operating inside of that structure's cost.
So
and a relo, just so we're clear, a relo is for utility relocation. It's not for individual relocation.
So the not individual relocations, it's just the government coming in, seizing your personal assets and paying you what they feel is just compensation for it. Anyway,
there's laws against what Justin's talking about.
Yeah, laws.
Well, here's
so one of the things that you mentioned there and I'm gonna be a stickler on this one. You talked about how it increases property value for those who were there with that, but if the government's coming in and buying you out, you no longer own that property, so your property value is not increasing. You're losing the property.
No, so let's think about. You have to look at it this way, okay? There are 2 types of things that happen here. When you look at the engineered plans, all right, not everything is a total take, okay? What a total take means that the government is buying your entire parcel. Your entire piece of property is now being owned by the government. That is very rare and in between, unless there are very specific situations to where there would have to be a total take.
So we're going to leave me a 3x3 patch that I can
zone
put up a little lawn chair in.
That goes into a whole host of property court cases that have decided what legally buildable areas are, what zoning allows for on a piece of property, the difference in between a buildable piece of property and a remnant parcel. Those are things that eventually may lead to a total take. Okay. Now, those are far in between, because what usually will happen is someone may be disrupted for a brief period of time. When it comes to construction, they may be compensated for right of way, but there also are easements that they're compensated for construction, things like that. But eventually now your house value, your property value is going to go up because you still have the structure that you're livable on, right?
If it's not demolished in the process.
That's not how that works.
That's how this is working.
That's not how that works. But you are now in an area that is along a major highway, which is also valuable.
Well, if I step out my front door and I get hit by an 18-wheeler,
that's not how that works.
Driving down the road. and for those that are not catching a lot of the hint of sarcasm, I'm actually hugely in favor of this. I would love a direct connector to 75, not just from the business perspectives of what it could bring and bring to our county here, but for personal reasons as well, because I will be honest with you, I hate getting stuck in traffic going into Cartersville, heading down to Atlanta.
It literally adds 20 minutes to your traffic. And nothing against our friends in Bartow County or Cartersville in itself,
suck.
But they have the same problem that we do, right? Like right where Food City's going up, guaranteed extra 10 minutes on your travel time. If you could literally, for us Romans who have to go down 411 to get to Atlanta on a average basis, right? We literally lose 15 to 20 minutes of our time per trip every time we have to go through Cartersville.
So I'm just giving Jamie a hard time on this.
Well, because here's the other thing too. And here's the other thing too, right? These are things that our viewers and everybody else is going to go ask our elected officials.
That's very true.
You know, and this is something that the elected officials or the project team may not be able to give answers to. Now, like finding
out more local officials are watching our production.
Yeah. Well, I do more. I do a lot more of this than they do here locally. and there are different funding sources. I know you asked about that too.
Yes.
There are different funding sources that go through this, but usually how a project this size works is there's what we call the STIP and the TIP. Okay. So from a statewide transportation perspective, you have what you call your STIP. That just means that somewhere at some point a project was thought of and we may do it in the state within the next 50 years. Okay. Your TIP means that there's actually funding on the books and allocated funding or planning funding, PE, engineering design, that is there so someone can be compensated to do a portion of it.
So it's literally just the tip for funding.
Just tip. You won't get paid. Got to be on the tip.
Might need to censor that one. Sorry about that.
I love it. No. What's funny is when I'm in my training classes, like, it's just a high school prom promise. That's what I'm trying to get the funding for.
And on that note, make sure that you are making sure that you're hitting the like button as well as the share button on any of the content that you see on any of the productions that we do produce and put our show out on. And make sure you're also hitting the subscribe button. That way you'll always be able to keep up to date with any of the content that we produce, and you'll never miss a moment of Jamie's smiling face and that roaring, infectious laughter. And also make sure you're going to our website at conservativestalk.org and hitting the sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and helping us out with what you're able to with that. And we also want to give a quick thank you again to Net News Network, and you can find them at netnewsnetwork.net. So local, kind of a almost a conglomerate of podcast and just radio audio productions. They're not quite up to our level with what we do, but they're getting there. I like a lot of the content. I've listened to a couple of the shows that
other people on our network. They're coming up.
Yeah, they're not as good as us, but of course we're well, at least in my opinion, and I'm a little prideful of what we do here. So, but you can also, we want to say a quick thank you to Veterans for America First, and that is the political grassroots organization that's fighting to ensure that America follows the America First principles and really fights to ensure that those are instilled in everyone, and they do that through their media wing, and that is Vet Voice. And you're able to find Vet Voice on platforms such as Getter, Facebook, YouTube, things on all the major social media platforms. So make sure you're looking for Vet Voice on any of those platforms. You'll be able to find our content as well as other America First productions. And you'll never find any content on there that does not push the policies that involve America First. And you'll never find anyone that is going to be willing to waver or back down. Well, I doubt that they would have anybody on there like that, but
no,
I don't know if they'll be, I don't know if they're as strong as us. I'll be honest with you.
I don't think anybody's as strong as us, but
that's true. But Vet Voice, we are your strongest.
They've put some good information together.
They do. So, Jamie, would you like to do your favorite part again?
Yes. 27 days until we cancel Stacey Abrams.
Oh,
can't wait.
I honestly cannot wait until, well, I say we never have to hear her voice again, but after reading that article that we, after running into this, I mean, I'm going to have to check under my bed before I go to bed tonight.
Wow.
Pull up under the cover to make sure she's not hiding up underneath my bed.
If
she's like a boogeyman in the closet.
So here's my final thoughts, right?
Uh-oh.
Then I'm going to wrap it out. Okay. That should scare every single person.
Oh, hang on. One second.
That should scare every single person, because this is now you can put the timeline together of how the same patterns of the Democratic Party are the same patterns of the Satanic Church, and they're both organizing to get to the same goal. We have to stop this. Second thing is, I just have to give a shout out to my colleagues in Floyd County and transportation and everything, because this is a hard fought project to get through, and to see it get ready to go into right away and then construction is a major deal. I think everyone should support this because it's going to save our community in the future.
Always say nobody can say that.
Major deal. Kudos. Seriously, kudos.
Oh man. But as always, thank you for watching our production, and we will see y'all later this week. Oh, before we jump out like that, we may potentially have a very special guest coming on later this week.
Kind of excited.
We're not going to give away too much of it too soon, but if they decide not to, then we're really going to
if he's willing,
put their name out.
He knows who he is.
He does, and he's watching.
He asked us.
Exactly, and we have the proof. So hopefully you'll be able to hear from him soon as well. And we'll see y'all later this week.
I wore my Brave shirt because Stacey Abrams